Every morning I woke up with the taste of copper in my mouth, and a nausea that felt like my insides were being slowly twisted by a rusty wrench. The doctors told me it was just age. My daughter-in-law told me it was time for a nursing home. But it took an old Italian watch repairman in a dusty antique shop to look at the gold Rolex on my wrist and scream, "Take it off, right now." I did not understand what was happening until he showed me the secret hidden inside the mechanism. I froze as I realized that the burning rash on my wrist was not an allergy, but a slow execution, and the executioner was my own blood. I am Floyd Jackson, 68 years old, and I have spent my entire life working with my hands, fixing machines that other people gave up on. I own a 4-story brownstone in Brooklyn that I bought with sweat and grease money back when nobody wanted to live in this neighborhood. Now that my home is worth millions, it seems I have become more valuable dead than alive. Before I tell you how I survived the most cold-blooded betrayal imaginable, please tell me in the comments which city you are listening from. Hit like and subscribe if you believe that respect is earned and not inherited. The bell above the door of Russo Antiques jingled softly as I pushed my way inside. The air in the shop was thick with the smell of old varnish dust and the metallic tang of brass, which usually comforted me. But today, it made my stomach turn over. I had to grab the edge of a heavy oak display case just to keep my legs from buckling under me. My skin felt tight and gray, looking more like wet cement than the dark brown it used to be. I wiped a layer of cold sweat from my forehead with a handkerchief that was already stained with specks of blood from my coughing fit earlier that morning. Mr. Russo was behind the counter, hunched over a magnifying glass, like a vulture examining a bone. He was 75 years old, with thick glasses and fingers that were permanently stained with oil and ink. We had known each other for 20 years, back when he was the only one who could find parts for my vintage turntable. He looked up, and his eyes narrowed immediately behind his thick lenses. "Floyd, you look like you just walked out of a grave," Russo said, his voice rough like sandpaper. "You need a doctor, not a watchmaker." I tried to laugh, but it came out as a wheeze. "I have seen doctors, Russo. They say it is vertigo. They say it is the flu. They say it is just being 68. I pulled up the sleeve of my jacket, wincing as the fabric rubbed against the raw red skin of my wrist. "I just need you to look at this watch. My son Tyrell gave it to me for my birthday last month. It is running slow, and the heat coming off it is bothering my skin. I think maybe the battery is leaking or something." Russo adjusted his glasses and reached out his hand. "Let me see." I unclasped the heavy gold band. It was a Rolex, or at least it looked like one. Tyrell had made a big show of presenting it to me at the dinner table, while his wife Courtney beamed like she had just won the lottery. It felt heavy in Russo's hand. He turned it over, examining the case back. He frowned. "This is not right," Russo muttered. "The weight distribution is off. And the heat." He touched the back of the watch case and immediately pulled his finger away. "Metal does not stay this warm, Floyd. Not unless there is friction or a power source that does not belong there." He did not reach for his screwdriver set. Instead, he walked to the back of his cluttered workshop and pulled out a bulky yellow device that looked like it belonged in a disaster movie. I recognized it from my days working in industrial plants. It was a Geiger counter, a device used to measure radiation. "Russo, what are you doing with that?" I asked, leaning heavily against the counter, my head swimming. "Just stay back," Floyd Russo ordered, his voice sharp. He switched the device on. At first, there was just the static hiss of background noise. Click, click. Then, as he moved the yellow wand closer to the watch lying on the velvet counterpad, the sound changed. Click, click, click. He moved it an inch closer. The machine started to scream. Rrrr. The sound was a frantic, continuous buzz that filled the small shop with a terrifying urgency. The needle on the gauge slammed all the way to the red zone and stayed there, trembling. Russo jumped back as if the watch had just turned into a viper. He grabbed a pair of long metal tongs from his workbench, snatched the watch up, and dropped it into a heavy lead-lined box he used for storing radium dials from the 1920s. He slammed the lid shut, and the screaming of the machine finally stopped, leaving a ringing silence in my ears. I stood there, frozen, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. What was that? "Russo, what is wrong with my watch?" Russo took off his glasses and wiped them on his shirt, his hands shaking visibly. "That is not a watch, Floyd. That is a murder weapon." I felt the room tilt sideways. I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. What are you talking about? There is a source of ionizing radiation inside that case, Russo said, his voice low and trembling. Probably cobalt-60. I have seen this before in industrial radiography equipment, but never inside a piece of jewelry. It emits powerful gamma rays. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and horror. He pointed a shaking finger at my wrist, where the skin was angry and ulcerated. That is not a rash, Floyd. That is a radiation burn. You have been wearing a nuclear reactor on your wrist for a month. My knees finally gave out. I sank onto a dusty wooden stool, gasping for air. The nausea that had been plaguing me suddenly made sense. The hair I found on my pillow every morning, the metallic taste, the fatigue that felt like I was wading through wet concrete. I was not sick. I was being cooked alive. Who gave this to you? Floyd Russo asked quietly, although I think he already knew the answer. Tyrell, my son. The name tasted like ash in my mouth. I closed my eyes, and the memory of my birthday dinner flashed in my mind, vivid and sickening. I saw Tyrell's face, sweating slightly as he clasped the watch around my wrist. I saw Courtney, my daughter-in-law, smiling that tight, predatory smile of hers. I remembered how she insisted I wear it all the time. "Promise me you will never take it off, Dad," she had said. "It is a symbol of how much time we have left together." Oh God, the time we have left. She was not being sentimental. She was counting down the hours. "It is impossible," I whispered more to myself than to Russo. "Tyrell is weak, and he is terrible with money, but he is my blood. He would not do this." Russo walked around the counter and put a hand on my shoulder. He kept his distance from the lead box. "Floyd, listen to me. Someone went to great lengths to modify that watch. They hollowed out the movement and replaced the counterweight with a radioactive pellet. They shielded the top so the face looks normal, but left the back unshielded so the radiation goes straight into your blood and bone marrow. This was not an accident. This is a professional hit job designed to look like a natural illness." He looked me dead in the eye. "If you had worn that for another week, your organs would have shut down. The doctors would have called it aggressive cancer or acute leukemia. No one would have ever checked the watch. You would have been buried with it." I looked down at my wrist. The skin was raw and peeling a perfect circle where the metal had touched me. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the radiation. It was the freezing realization that the people I invited into my home, the people I cooked Sunday dinner for, had been watching me die day by day and asking if I felt any better, while hoping I would get worse. I remembered the way Courtney looked at my house, my beautiful 4-story brownstone with the original woodwork and the garden in the back. I remembered the phone calls Tyrell would take in the hallway, whispering about debts and deadlines. They did not just want my house. They wanted me erased. They wanted me to wither away and die in agony so they could cash out. Floyd Russo said gently, "I need to call the police. This is a biohazard. This is attempted murder." I stood up. The dizziness was still there, but something else was rising up inside me, pushing back the sickness. It was a rage. A hot, bright rage that burned hotter than any cobalt-60. "No, Russo," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Do not call the police. Not yet." "Why?" "They are killing you. Because if we call the police now, they will claim they bought it at a flea market. They will play the victim. They will say they did not know. Tyrell will cry, and Courtney will pretend to be shocked." I looked at the lead box. I need to know everything. I need to know how they got it and who helped them. I need to make sure that when they go down, they never get up again. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a roll of cash. "I need you to keep that thing in the safe, Russo. Do not let it near anyone. And I need a favor. Anything, Floyd. I need a watch. A fake one. One that looks exactly like that Rolex, but without the poison inside. Can you get me one by tomorrow?" Russo looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You are going to wear it, aren't you? You are going to go back there and let them think you are still dying." I straightened my back, ignoring the pain in my joints. "I am a mechanic, Russo. When an engine is making a noise, you do not just cover your ears. You open it up, you find the broken part, and you rip it out." I walked to the door of the shop. The sun was shining outside, but my world had gone dark. My son wanted a dead father. My daughter-in-law wanted a vacant house. Well, I thought, as I stepped out onto the Brooklyn pavement, they were going to get exactly what they wanted. Only the ghost they were about to create was going to haunt them while they were still wide awake. I walked out of that antique shop, and the bright afternoon sun hit me like a physical blow. I felt naked without the weight of the watch on my wrist, but the ghost of it was still there, burning a ring of fire into my skin. I did not go home. I could not go home. If I looked at Tyrell right now, I would probably strangle him with my bare hands, and that would be too easy for him. He deserved something slower. He deserved to feel the ground crumble beneath his feet, just like I was feeling now. I climbed into my old Ford truck parked down the block. It was a '98 model with a rusted bumper and an engine that rattled, but I kept it running because I understood how it worked. Machines were honest. If a piston fired, it fired. If a belt snapped, it snapped. They did not smile at you while they were killing you. I sat there with my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard the leather groaned under my calloused palms. I stared at the raw red circle on my wrist. It looked like a branding mark, a label that said, "Property of the grave." For the last month, I had been blaming my body for failing me. I blamed the 68 years of hard labor. I blamed the grease and the fumes of the machine shop. Every morning I woke up with a pillow covered in my own hair, clumps of gray wool that came out with the slightest touch. I thought it was stress. I thought it was grief for my late wife. I would stand in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my pale gums and the dark circles under my eyes, and I would tell myself to tough it out. Floyd Jackson does not complain. Floyd Jackson does not get sick. But it was not age. It was poison. I remembered the taste in my mouth. It was a constant metallic tang, like I had been sucking on a penny. I had told Tyrell about it 2 weeks ago over Sunday dinner. I remembered the way he paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. He did not look concerned. He looked terrified, but not for me. He was terrified that I would figure it out. And Courtney, she just poured me another glass of iced tea and said it was probably just a side effect of the blood pressure medication that her friend the doctor had prescribed. The medication, God help me. They had me swallowing pills to treat symptoms that they were causing. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. The darkness behind my eyelids was filled with the memory of that night, the birthday party. It played out in my mind like a movie reel, but now I was watching it with the eyes of a man who knew the ending. It was supposed to be a small gathering. That was what I wanted. Just family, maybe a few old friends from the neighborhood. But Courtney had insisted on a spectacle. She filled my brownstone with people I barely knew. Real estate agents in sharp suits, developers with shark smiles, people who looked at my mahogany crown molding and saw dollar signs instead of craftsmanship. I sat at the head of the table, wearing my best suit, feeling uncomfortable and out of place in my own dining room. The air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and roast lamb. Courtney stood up, tapping a silver spoon against her crystal champagne flute. The sound rang out clear and sharp, silencing the room. She looked beautiful. I had to give her that. She was wearing a white dress that made her look like an angel. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and her smile was dazzling. She placed a hand on my shoulder. Her fingers were cold. "Everyone please raise a glass to the patriarch of this family," she said, her voice trembling with what I thought was emotion. "To Floyd, a man who built a legacy from nothing. We are so grateful for everything you have done for us, Dad, and we want to make sure you know how much your time means to us." The guests applauded. I looked at Tyrell. He was sitting to my right, drinking scotch like it was water. He was sweating even though the room was cool. He would not meet my eyes. He kept fidgeting with his napkin, tearing it into tiny white strips. Courtney reached under the table and pulled out a velvet box. It was dark green leather with gold trim. She placed it in front of me with a flourish. "We wanted to get you something timeless," she whispered, leaning down so her cheek brushed against mine. "Something that represents the strength and the power you have always shown." I opened the box. The watch sat there on a cushion of white silk. It gleamed under the chandelier lights. Gold case, black dial. It looked heavy and expensive, a rich man's toy. I took it out. It was heavier than I expected, unusually heavy. Tyrell spoke up then, his voice slurring slightly. "It is a custom piece, Pop. Vintage casing, but the insides are special. Courtney found a guy who restores them. It is one of a kind." I remembered feeling a swell of pride. My son, who could never hold down a job, who was always asking for loans, had done this for me. I felt guilty for thinking he was a failure. I thought this was his way of saying he finally grew up. "Here, let me put it on for you, Dad," Courtney said. She took the watch from my hand. I extended my wrist. The metal felt cold against my skin for a split second before it started to warm up. I heard the clasp click shut. It was a solid, final sound, like the lock of a prison cell. "It looks perfect on you," Courtney said, stepping back to admire her handiwork. "Promise me you will never take it off. It needs to be worn to keep the time accurate. It runs on your movement, your life force. My life force." She was literally harvesting my life force. I opened my eyes back in the truck. The rage was now a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I looked at the passenger seat where the empty space seemed to mock me. I had driven home that night touching the watch every few minutes, feeling proud. And all the while the radiation was seeping into my veins, cooking my marrow, destroying the white blood cells that were supposed to protect me. Every hug from Courtney since that day, every time she checked my forehead, every time she asked if I was feeling tired, it was not love, it was a progress check. She was monitoring the dosage. I started the truck. The engine roared to life, vibrating through the chassis. My first instinct was to drive straight to the police station. I wanted to drag Tyrell out of that house in handcuffs. I wanted to see Courtney scream as they took her away. But Russo was right. If I went to the police now, what proof did I have? A watch that Russo had locked in a lead box. They would say I was a crazy old man who bought a contaminated antique from a senile shopkeeper. They would say they bought a normal watch and I must have swapped it. They would have receipts, fake ones probably. Courtney was smart. She covered her tracks. And Tyrell was a coward, but he was a desperate coward. And desperate men lie better than anyone else. I needed indisputable proof. I needed to connect the poison in my blood to the timeline of their gift. And I needed to do it without them knowing I was on to them. I put the truck in gear and pulled away from the curb. I did not head toward the brownstone. I drove toward the highway. I needed a hospital, but not the one in my neighborhood. Not the one where Dr. Evans worked. Evans was Courtney's golf partner. He had been dismissing my symptoms for weeks, prescribing me antacids for stomach cancer symptoms. He was either incompetent or he was in on it. I could not take that chance. I drove for 45 minutes crossing the bridge into Jersey. I found a large urgent care center attached to a university hospital. I pulled into the parking lot, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from the effort of keeping the truck steady. I walked into the emergency room. It was crowded and smelled of antiseptic and floor wax. I marched up to the triage nurse. She was a young black woman with braids, looking tired but sharp. "Name?" she asked without looking up. "Floyd Jackson," I said. "What seems to be the problem, Mr. Jackson?" I rolled up my sleeve and slammed my arm onto the counter. The raw, ulcerated ring on my wrist looked angry and violent under the fluorescent lights. The nurse gasped and stood up, knocking her chair back. "I need a full toxicity screen," I said, my voice low and steady. "I need you to check my white blood cell count, and I need you to test for radiation exposure, specifically gamma radiation." She looked at me, her eyes wide. "Sir, have you been involved in an industrial accident?" "No," I said, staring straight ahead at the double doors that led to the treatment rooms. "It was a domestic accident. I trusted the wrong people." I sat in that waiting room for 3 hours. When they finally took me back, the doctors were wearing protective gear. They treated me like I was a walking bomb, and in a way I was. When the needles went into my arm, I did not flinch. I watched my blood fill the vials. Dark red. Life. They thought they were draining it out of me, drop by drop. But they forgot one thing. I was made of tougher stuff than they realized. I survived the riots in the 60s. I survived working double shifts in freezing warehouses to pay off the mortgage. I survived burying my wife. I would survive this. The doctor came back an hour later with a clipboard. He looked pale. "Mr. Jackson, your white blood cell count is critically low, and we found traces of cellular damage consistent with acute radiation syndrome. We need to admit you immediately. We need to notify the authorities." I buttoned my shirt, covering the bandage on my arm. "You will do no such thing," I said. "But sir, you are sick." "I know I am sick," I snapped. "But I am not dying today. I need those test results printed out. I need an official copy signed and dated. and I need you to keep this visit off the main insurance database for 24 hours. I will pay cash." The doctor looked at me like I was insane. "Mr. Jackson, I cannot in good conscience let you leave." "You have to," I said, standing up. My legs felt like jelly, but I locked my knees and stood tall. "I have a job to finish. If I stay here now, the people who did this to me will get away with it. They will sell my house and they will dance on my grave. I need to go back. Go back where the doctor asked. To the scene of the crime," I said. I took the envelope with the test results and walked out. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I got back into my truck and placed the envelope on the passenger seat. It was the first weapon in my arsenal. Now came the hard part. I had to go home. I had to walk through that front door and look into the eyes of the monsters who raised me and married me. I had to let them see me weak. I had to let them think they were winning. I checked my face in the rearview mirror. I looked terrible. Good. That was part of the disguise. I reached under the seat and pulled out a small tin of breath mints. I popped 2 in my mouth to mask the metallic taste. Then I turned the key. "I am coming for you, Tyrell," I whispered to the empty cab. I drove back toward Brooklyn into the gathering dark, ready to play the performance of my life. I pulled my truck up to the curb in front of the brownstone and turned off the engine. The silence that followed was heavy. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, looking up at the building I had bought 40 years ago. It used to be a home. It used to be filled with the smell of my wife's cooking and the sound of Tyrell running down the stairs. Now, as I looked at the dark windows on the 3rd floor, it looked like a mausoleum, a beautiful, expensive tomb that my family was trying to seal me inside of before I was even dead. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. I rubbed my eyes to make them look redder and let my shoulders slump. I needed to look like a man who was defeated, a man who was fading away. I could not let them see the fire that was burning in my gut. That fire was the only thing keeping me upright, but it had to remain hidden. I grabbed my cane from the passenger seat, not because I needed it to walk, but because I needed a prop. I needed them to see me as frail. I climbed the stone steps slowly, making sure to drag my left foot just a little. I put my key in the lock. The tumblers clicked over with a heavy, solid sound. I pushed the oak door open and stepped inside. The atmosphere hit me instantly. Outside, the air was cool and smelled of city exhaust and rain. Inside, the house smelled of lavender air freshener and something else, something stale. It was the smell of secrets. The hallway was dim. Courtney liked to keep the lights low to save on electricity, even though she spent thousands on clothes. Or maybe she just preferred the dark because it made it easier to hide who she really was. I closed the door behind me, and the sound echoed through the high ceilings. Before I could even take off my coat, I felt eyes on me. I looked toward the living room. They were sitting there like they had been waiting for a show to start. Courtney was on the velvet sofa, legs crossed, holding a glass of white wine. Tyrell was standing by the fireplace, pacing back and forth. As soon as they saw me, the energy in the room shifted. It snapped tight, like a wire about to break. "Dad," Courtney said. Her voice was high and sharp. "Where have you been? We were worried sick." She did not look worried. She looked annoyed. She set her wine glass down on the coffee table a little too hard. I shuffled into the room, leaning heavily on my cane. "I just went for a drive," I said, letting my voice crack. "I needed some air. The house felt suffocating." Tyrell stopped pacing. He turned to look at me and his eyes went immediately to my left arm. I was wearing my old jacket and the sleeve was pulled down, but when I reached up to unbutton my collar, the fabric slid back. The wrist was bare. I saw the color drain from Tyrell's face. It was instant. 1 second he was flushed with alcohol, and the next he was gray. He took a step forward, his hands twitching at his sides. "Dad," he stammered. His voice was trembling. "Dad, where is the watch?" I looked at him, blinking slowly, pretending to be confused. "The watch? The Rolex?" Tyrell said, the volume of his voice rising. "The one we gave you. Why aren't you wearing it?" I saw Courtney stiffen on the sofa. She did not panic like Tyrell. She became completely still. Her eyes narrowed into slits, focusing on my wrist like a laser. She was calculating, assessing the threat. "Oh, that," I said, waving my hand dismissively. The strap was bothering me. It felt loose. I was afraid it might fall off and get lost. I walked over to my armchair and sank into it, letting out a long groan of pain. I saw Tyrell exchange a frantic look with Courtney. He wiped a layer of sweat from his upper lip. "So where is it?" Courtney asked. Her voice was calm, but it had an edge to it, a razor blade wrapped in silk. "Did you leave it somewhere?" "I took it to a shop." I lied. I kept my eyes on the floor, playing the part of the tired old man. "Just a little place down on 4th Avenue. The cobbler there said he could tighten the leather for me." "A cobbler?" Tyrell practically shouted. "Dad, that is a vintage timepiece. You cannot just give it to a shoe repairman. He could break it. He could open it." I looked up at Tyrell sharply. "Why would he open it, Tyrell? It is just a strap adjustment." The room went silent. Tyrell froze. He realized he had said too much. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. I watched the vein in his neck pulsing. It was beating so fast, I could almost count the rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. He was terrified, not because he cared about the watch, but because he knew what was inside. If a repairman opened the back case, he would see the lead shielding. He would see the modification. "I just mean," Tyrell stuttered, looking at Courtney for help. "I just mean, it is delicate. You should have told us. We would have taken it to a specialist." "It is fine," I said, closing my eyes. "He said I can pick it up in a few days. I am just so tired, Tyrell. I feel like I have been carrying a heavy weight all day." I watched Courtney through my eyelashes. She was staring at Tyrell, willing him to shut up. She stood up slowly and walked over to me. She placed a hand on my forehead. Her palm was damp. "You do look terrible, Dad," she said. "You are burning up. Maybe you should go lie down." "I am fine," I muttered, pulling away from her touch. "I just need some water." I saw her glance at the side table where my usual glass of water sat. I wondered what was in it today. Arsenic, antifreeze, or just more of the sedative she had been feeding me to keep me docile. I stood up, using the arm of the chair for leverage. My knees shook. This part was not an act. The stress of the confrontation was draining the little energy I had left. "I think I will go to my room," I said. "Wait," Tyrell said, taking a step toward me. "Which shop, Dad? Which cobbler on 4th Avenue? I want to go get it back. I do not trust them with your gift." I turned to look at my son. He looked pathetic. A grown man of 32, terrified of a watch. "I do not remember the name, son," I said. "It was just a shop. I have the ticket in my jacket somewhere. I will find it tomorrow." I saw the panic flare in his eyes again. He wanted to search me. He wanted to tear my jacket apart to find that ticket, but he could not do it. Not without admitting that the watch was more important than my life. "Let him sleep, Tyrell," Courtney said sharply. She stared at me, her eyes cold and dead. "He can find it tomorrow. He is not going anywhere." I turned my back on them and walked toward the stairs. Every step was a battle. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. I climbed the stairs slowly, one hand on the banister, gripping the wood until my knuckles turned white. When I reached the landing, I did not go to my room. I stopped. The hallway floor was covered in a thick Persian runner that muffled footsteps. I knew this house better than anyone. I knew that the ventilation vent in the hallway connected directly to the living room ceiling below. It was an old heating system from the 1920s. Sound traveled through those metal pipes like a telephone wire. I knelt down on the rug, ignoring the pain in my joints. I pressed my ear against the brass grate of the vent. Down below, the silence had broken. "You idiot," Courtney's voice hissed up through the grate. She was not shouting, but her voice was filled with venom. "Why did you scream at him about opening the watch? Do you want to hand him a confession?" "I did not mean to," Tyrell whispered. His voice sounded like he was on the verge of tears. "But what if the repairman opens it, Courtney? What if he sees the cobalt? What if he gets sick?" "Who cares if the repairman gets sick?" Courtney snapped. "The problem is the timeline, Tyrell. The buyer for the land wants the property vacated in 30 days. If your father is not gone, by then the deal falls through." I listened, my breath catching in my throat. Hearing it out loud was different than suspecting it. It was like a physical punch to the gut. Gone. She did not say moved out. She did not say in a nursing home. She said gone. "We need that watch back on his wrist," Tyrell continued. "The doctor said he needs constant exposure. If he takes a break for a few days, his marrow might start to recover. We are so close, Courtney. He looks like a ghost already. He is not recovering, Courtney said. Did you see him? He is dragging his feet. His skin is gray. The damage is already done. Even without the watch, he probably only has a few weeks. But we cannot take risks. Find the ticket in his jacket while he is asleep. We get the watch back, we put it on him while he is sedated, and we finish this. I cannot go in there, Tyrell whined. He locks the door now. Then break it down if you have to, Courtney said. Or better yet, get him to sign the power of attorney tomorrow. Once we have that signature, it does not matter if he lives or dies. We can pull the plug ourselves. I pulled my head away from the vent. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they might hear it through the floorboards. Pull the plug. I sat back against the wall in the dark hallway. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. My son was discussing my murder like it was a business transaction that was running behind schedule. I looked at my hands. They were shaking. Not from palsy, not from age, from pure adrenaline. They thought I was a ghost. They thought I was already dead walking. I stood up slowly. I walked to my bedroom door and went inside. I locked it. Then I dragged my heavy oak dresser in front of the door. I went to the closet and reached into the back of the top shelf. I pulled out a small black box. Inside was a voice recorder I used to use for dictating repair notes at the shop. I put new batteries in it. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the door. You want me to sign Tyrell? I whispered to the empty room. You want the power. I laid back on the pillow. I would give them a signature. I would give them a show. But the only thing I was going to authorize was their destruction. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle, waiting for the sound of footsteps on the stairs. I was not the prey anymore. I was the trap, and they were about to walk right into me. The morning sun tried to push through the heavy velvet curtains of my bedroom, but Courtney had drawn them tight. She wanted this room to feel like a crypt. I lay perfectly still in the center of my king-sized mahogany bed. My body ached, not from the radiation anymore, but from the effort of holding this pose. I had spent an hour applying a thin layer of pale makeup to my cheeks, and I had deliberately not shaved for 2 days. The white stubble on my chin made me look 10 years older. I was stage managing my own death scene, and the audience was about to arrive. At 9 o'clock sharp, the door handle turned. It was not a gentle opening. It was the confident intrusion of someone who already believed they owned the place. Courtney stepped in first. She was wearing a navy blue business suit that looked sharp enough to cut skin. Her heels clicked on the hardwood floor with a military rhythm. "Good morning, Dad," she chirped. Her voice was too loud for a sick room. It bounced off the walls. "I brought some friends to see you." She stepped aside and ushered in 2 men I had never seen before. The first was a tall, lanky white man in a gray suit that fit him poorly. His shoes were scuffed at the toes. I knew that look. That was the look of a lawyer who chased ambulances and worked out of a strip mall. The second man was shorter, holding a black briefcase and looking at his watch as if he had a bus to catch. "This is Mr. Stone," Courtney said, gesturing to the tall man. "And this is Mr. Miller, a notary public. Tyrell told them about your condition, and they were kind enough to make a house call." I moved my head slowly on the pillow. My neck muscles were stiff. I looked past them to the doorway, where Tyrell was lingering. He looked like a ghost haunting his own house. He would not enter the room fully. He stood with one foot in the hallway, his eyes fixed on the carpet. "Tyrell," I rasped. My voice was a dry scratch. "Who are these people?" Tyrell flinched, but he did not speak. Courtney answered for him. She walked to the side of the bed and loomed over me. Her perfume was overpowering. It smelled of expensive flowers trying to mask something rotten. "They are here to help us help you, Dad," she said. Her smile did not reach her eyes. Her eyes were scanning the room, checking for anything out of place. "Dr. Evans is very concerned about your decline. He says you could have a stroke at any moment. If that happens, you will not be able to make decisions. You will be trapped in your own body." She sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under her weight. I felt a flash of anger that she dared to sit there. That was my wife's side of the bed. "We just want to make sure your wishes are respected," she continued. "Mr. Stone has prepared a standard power of attorney document. It just gives Tyrell and me the authority to handle your medical bills and manage the house maintenance while you recover." Mr. Stone stepped forward. He pulled a thick document from a folder. He did not look me in the eye. He looked at the heart monitor I had set up on the nightstand, a prop I had borrowed from a nurse friend. "It is a durable power of attorney, Mr. Jackson," the lawyer said. His voice was oily. "It is very standard in these situations. It allows your family to access your accounts so they can pay for your care without waiting for probate courts. It is really for your protection." Protection. That was a rich word coming from the man standing next to my poisoner. I reached out a trembling hand. "Let me see it," I whispered. Courtney snatched the paper from the lawyer and placed it in my hand. It felt heavy. I lifted it to my face, squinting as if I could barely focus. But behind my half-closed eyelids, my vision was sharp. I scanned the legal jargon. It was not standard. It was a death warrant for my freedom. Clause 4 gave them the power to liquidate real estate assets. Clause 7 gave them full access to all retirement funds and life insurance policies. Clause 9 allowed them to make end-of-life medical decisions, including the cessation of life support. They were not asking for permission to pay the electric bill. They were asking for permission to sell my house and pull the plug on my ventilator the moment the check cleared. I looked at Tyrell again. He was leaning against the doorframe, picking at his fingernails. He knew what was in this paper. He had probably helped draft it. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The boy I taught to change a tire. He was standing there waiting for me to sign away my life so he could pay off his gambling debts. I lowered the paper. The weight of it felt like a concrete block on my chest. The air in the room seemed to vanish. I felt a genuine wave of panic, not because I was sick, but because I was surrounded. There were 3 of them in the room, and 1 at the door. I was an old black man in a bed, and they were the authority. If I refused outright, what would they do? Would they smother me with a pillow right here? Would they forge the signature later? "I need to read it," I said slowly. My breathing was shallow. "David, there is no need for that," Courtney said, her voice hardening. "It is just legal mumbo-jumbo. Tyrell read it. I read it. We are your family. Do you not trust us?" She leaned closer. Her face was inches from mine. I could see the pores in her skin under her makeup. I could see the cold, hard ambition in her blue eyes. "Just sign it, Dad. Then you can rest. You look so tired. Do you not want to rest?" The threat was clear. "Sign it and you can sleep. Do not sign it and we will make your life a living hell." Mr. Stone uncapped a black fountain pen. He held it out to me. The notary opened his logbook, ready to stamp the theft of my legacy. "I have to do this. I have to play the game." I lifted my right hand. I made it shake. It was harder than you might think. My hands were steady. They were hands that could calibrate an engine to within 1,000th of an inch. To make them tremble like a dried leaf took focus. I reached for the pen. Mr. Stone placed it in my fingers. It was cold and slick. Courtney placed the document on a clipboard and held it steady on my chest. "Right here, Dad, on the line next to the X." I moved the pen toward the paper. I watched their eyes. All 3 of them were fixated on the tip of that pen. They were like wolves watching a wounded deer. They were practically salivating. I touched the pen to the paper. A tiny dot of ink appeared. Then I let my hand spasm. The pen slipped from my fingers. It rolled across the paper, leaving a jagged black line before falling onto the sheets. "Oops," I whispered. "I am sorry. My hand. It is so weak." Courtney let out a sharp breath through her nose. It sounded like a hiss. She picked up the pen and jammed it back into my hand. She wrapped her fingers around mine, squeezing hard. Her nails dug into my skin. "Hold it tight, Dad. Just focus. Do it for Tyrell." I looked at Tyrell. He finally looked up. His eyes were wet. He looked terrified. He knew that what Courtney was doing, forcing a pen into my hand, was illegal. It was coercion. But he said nothing. I tried again. This time I managed to make a squiggly line that looked like the start of an F. But then I triggered the cough. I had been practicing this. I drew air into my diaphragm and forced it out in a violent spasm. Cough, cough, cough. My whole body jerked. I dropped the pen again. I grabbed my chest, gasping for air. I made the sound wet and rattling, like there was fluid in my lungs. "Water," I choked out. "I cannot breathe. Water." Courtney froze. For a second she looked like she wanted to slap me, but Mr. Stone took a step back, looking alarmed. "Is he okay?" the lawyer asked. "This does not look good, Mrs. Jackson. If he is not lucid, we cannot notarize this." "He is fine," Courtney snapped. She grabbed the glass of water from the nightstand and shoved it toward my lips. Here, drink, then sign. I took a sip and let the water dribble down my chin onto my pajamas. I coughed again, spitting water onto the expensive legal document. The ink on the page started to run. "I am sorry," I gasped, sinking back into the pillows, my eyes rolling back slightly. "I am so dizzy. The room is spinning. I cannot see the line." Courtney stared at the wet paper. Her face turned a shade of red that clashed with her suit. She looked at the lawyer, who was now backing toward the door. "We should come back later, Mrs. Jackson," the lawyer said. "He is clearly in distress. If we force this, it could be contested in court. We need him to be calm." "No," Courtney said, standing up. Her voice was a growl. "He is faking. He is just being difficult." I let my eyes close. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I slowed my breathing until it was barely visible. Tyrell stepped into the room. "Courtney, let it go," he whispered. "Look at him. He is out of it. Let him sleep. We can try tomorrow." Courtney looked from Tyrell to the lawyer and then down at me. If looks could kill, I would have been dead right then and there. She slammed the clipboard down on the nightstand. "Fine," she spat. "Tomorrow. But first thing in the morning." She turned to the lawyer. "I am sorry for wasting your time, Mr. Stone. He has good days and bad days. Today is obviously a bad day." She walked to the door, her heels striking the floor with angry force. But before she left, she turned back to look at me one last time. "Rest up, Dad," she said. Her voice was ice cold. "Because tomorrow you are signing that paper, even if I have to guide your hand myself." The door closed. I heard them walking down the hall. I heard the front door open and close as the lawyer left. I lay there in the silence, listening to the beating of my own heart. I had won the battle, but the war was closing in. I looked at the wet, crumpled paper on the nightstand. Tomorrow. I did not have until tomorrow. I had to move tonight. I had to find the proof that would bury them before they buried me. I wiped the water from my chin. The act was over. Now the work began. The house was silent. It was the kind of heavy, suffocating silence that usually falls over a graveyard at midnight. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between the beats of my own heart. 1, 2, 3. It was 2 in the morning. The sedative Courtney had forced on me earlier was strong. It made my limbs feel like they were made of lead, and my head feel like it was stuffed with cotton. But I had fought it. I had held the pill under my tongue until she left the room, and then spat it into a tissue. I needed to be awake. I needed to be sharp. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. The floorboards were cold against my bare feet. A wave of dizziness hit me instantly. The room tilted sideways, and I had to grip the mattress to keep from falling over. The radiation was not a lie. The damage to my body was real. My joints burned, and my stomach churned with that familiar metallic nausea. But beneath the sickness there was adrenaline. It was pumping through my veins, cold and hard, sharpening my senses. I was not just an old sick man tonight. I was a mechanic. I was a man who knew how to take things apart to see how they worked. And tonight, I was going to take apart my son's life to see where the rot was. I opened my bedroom door. The hinges were well oiled. I had oiled them myself 6 months ago. I stepped out into the hallway. The darkness was absolute, but I did not need light. I knew every inch of this house. I knew that the third step from the top creaked if you put weight on the center. I knew that the railing on the landing was slightly loose. I moved like a ghost, a phantom in my own home. I made my way down the stairs. My destination was Courtney's home office on the 2nd floor. It used to be my study. It used to be a place where I smoked cigars and read the evening paper. Now it was her command center. It was where she plotted her real estate deals, and apparently where she plotted my murder. I reached the door. It was closed. I tried the handle gently. Locked. Of course, Courtney was careful. She treated that room like a vault. I smiled in the darkness. She forgot who I was. She forgot that before I owned the brownstone, I worked in a machine shop where we had to pick locks on rusted tool chests half the time. I reached into the pocket of my pajama pants. I had a small tension wrench and a pick that I had fashioned from a couple of stiff paper clips earlier that evening. It was crude, but it would work on a standard interior door lock. I knelt down. My knees cracked loudly, and I froze, holding my breath. I waited for the sound of a door opening upstairs. I waited for Tyrell's voice, but there was nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the wind rattling the window pane. I inserted the tension wrench. I applied a slight pressure to the left. Then I slid the pick in. I felt the pins inside the cylinder. 1, 2, 3. I manipulated them gently, feeling for the binding point. It took focus. My hands were shaking slightly from the sickness, but my muscle memory was intact. Click. The lock turned. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. I turned the handle and slipped inside, closing the door softly behind me. The office smelled of ozone and stale coffee. I moved to the desk. Courtney's laptop was sitting there asleep. I opened it. The screen flared to life, casting a harsh blue light across the room. I squinted against the glare. Password. I stared at the prompt. Courtney was arrogant. She thought I was a technophobe. She thought I barely knew how to use a smartphone, let alone hack a computer. She probably did not think she needed a strong password for the people in this house. I tried her birthday. Incorrect. I tried Terrell's birthday. Incorrect. I tried the date of their wedding. Incorrect. I paused. Think Floyd. Think like her. What does she love? What does she value above everything else? I typed in one word. Money. Incorrect. I typed in another. Success. Incorrect. Then I remembered something she said at dinner once. She said that her goal was to be a millionaire by 30. I typed in millionaire 30. The screen unlocked. I almost laughed out loud. It was pathetic, but it got me in. I did not waste time. I went straight to her email client. I scanned the inbox. There were hundreds of emails from clients, other agents and mortgage brokers. But I was looking for something specific. I was looking for the reason why I had to die now, why this month. I found a folder marked Project Horizon. The name sounded corporate and soulless. I opened it. The emails were from a sender named Vanguard Development Group. The subject line of the most recent email was Urgent Final Offer Terms. I clicked it open. My eyes scanned the text, and as I read, I felt the blood turn to ice in my veins. Dear Mrs. Miller, the email read, we are pleased to inform you that the board has approved the acquisition of the property at 452 Sterling Place for the sum of $6.2 million. This offer is contingent on the property being delivered with vacant possession and a clean title by the 1st of next month. As discussed, the demolition crew is scheduled to begin site preparation on the 5th. This property is the keystone for the new shopping plaza entrance, and we cannot proceed without it. If the property is not vacated by the deadline, the offer will be withdrawn, and we will move the entrance to the adjacent lot. I sat back in the chair. $6.2 million. That was the price of my life. That was the price of the home I had raised my family in. They were not just selling it. They were selling it to be demolished, to be turned into a glass door for a shopping mall. I looked at the date. The 1st of the month was 10 days away. That explained everything. That explained the rush. That explained why they could not wait for the radiation to work slowly. That explained why they were panicking about the watch. They needed me dead and buried, or at least incapacitated in a hospital, so they could forge the deed and hand over the keys. Vacant possession. That meant no tenants. No old men refusing to leave. I scrolled down. There was a reply from Courtney. Do not worry about the deadline she had written. The current occupant is in declining health and will be permanently relocated within the week. We will have the title ready. Prepare the wire transfer. Permanently relocated. That was a polite way of saying, put in a pine box. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was not sadness. It was pure, unadulterated pain. I had welcomed Courtney into this family. I had paid for their wedding. I had thought she was ambitious, but I never thought she was a monster. But she was just the architect. Tyrell was the one who let her in. I minimized the email window. I needed to know why Tyrell agreed to this. $6 million was a lot of money, but Tyrell loved this house. He grew up here. Why was he so desperate? I opened the browser history. It was a mess of real estate listings and luxury car sites. But then I saw something else. A bookmark bar folder simply labeled Accounts. I clicked it. It auto-logged into a cryptocurrency exchange platform. The screen filled with red numbers. It was a sea of red. I stared at the portfolio balance. Negative $480,000. My breath caught in my throat. Tyrell, my foolish, stupid son. He had leveraged everything. He had bought into some coin scam on a margin account, and the market had crashed. I clicked on the Messages tab within the trading platform. There were messages from a user named Sharkfin. "Payment is past due, Tyrell," the message said. "We are not a bank. We do not do extensions. You have until the end of the month, or we come for collateral. And you know we do not take checks. We take fingers." I closed the laptop. My hand was shaking so hard the screen wobbled. It all made sense now. The perfect storm. Tyrell was $500,000 in the hole and looking at getting his legs broken or worse. Courtney saw an opportunity to cash out on a property she hated and walk away with millions, and I was the only thing standing in their way. I was not a father to them anymore. I was an obstacle. I was a problem to be solved, a blockage in the pipe. I stood up. The dizziness was back, but I pushed it down. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small USB drive I had brought with me. I plugged it into the laptop. I copied the emails. I copied the trading account screenshots. I copied the threatening messages from the loan shark. I pulled the drive out and put it in my pocket. It felt hot against my leg. This was it. This was the nail in their coffin. I wiped the keyboard with the sleeve of my pajama shirt to remove my fingerprints. I closed the laptop. I locked the door behind me using the pick to turn the tumble back. I climbed the stairs back to my room. Every step felt heavier than the last. I was carrying the weight of the truth now. My son was not just a murderer. He was a coward who sold his father to save his own skin. I got back into bed and pulled the covers up to my chin. I lay there in the dark, clutching the USB drive in my hand. Let them come tomorrow with their notary and their pens. Let them try to bully me. I closed my eyes. I was ready. I had the weapon I needed, and tomorrow I was going to pull the trigger. The rain in Brooklyn has a way of washing away the dirt on the sidewalks, but it can never wash away the grime of betrayal. I drove my truck through the slick streets at 4 in the morning, leaving the brownstone behind me like a bad dream. My destination was not a police station or a hospital. It was a small townhouse in Bed-Stuy, with a wrought iron fence and a heavy oak door. This was the home and office of Barbara Davis. Barbara was the daughter of my best friend from the machine shop days. I had paid for her law school tuition when her father passed away in an industrial accident. She was family in the way that actually mattered, not by blood, but by loyalty. I had called her on a burner phone 30 minutes ago. She did not ask why I was calling before dawn. She just said the coffee would be ready. When she opened the door, she did not hug me. She looked at my gray skin and the dark circles under my eyes, and she stepped aside to let me in. Her living room was lined with books, law journals, and case files stacked like bricks. It was a fortress of logic and justice. I sat down in a leather chair that smelled of old paper and tobacco. I placed 2 things on her coffee table: the USB drive I had stolen from Courtney's laptop and the medical report from the urgent care clinic. Barbara's husband was a doctor, a hematologist at Mount Sinai. He came down the stairs in his robe, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He picked up the medical report first. I watched his face as he read. I watched the way his eyebrows pulled together and the way his lips thinned into a straight line. He looked at me, and then he looked at Barbara. "Floyd," he said quietly, "do you understand what these numbers mean?" I nodded slowly. "It means they are cooking me, Doc. It means my insides are burning." "It is worse than that," he said, sitting down opposite me. "Your lymphocyte count is critically low. The radiation from the cobalt-60 has been suppressing your bone marrow function for weeks. You are showing signs of acute radiation syndrome. The nausea, the hair loss, the metallic taste. These are not side effects. These are the sounds of your cells dying." He leaned forward, his voice urgent. "If you put that watch back on for even 2 more days, the damage will be irreversible. You will enter the latent phase, where you feel better for a short time, and then your organs will fail, one by one. It is a painful way to go, Floyd. It is torture." I looked at my hands. They were the hands of a man who had built things, strong hands. Now they were trembling not from fear, but from the cellular destruction happening inside me. "So I have a deadline," I said. "You need to be in a sterile isolation ward right now," the doctor said. "You need chelation therapy. You need to be away from that source." "I cannot go to the hospital yet," I said. "If I vanish now, they win. They sell the house. They destroy the evidence." Barbara spoke up then. She had plugged the USB drive into her secure laptop. She was scrolling through the emails I had copied. Her face was illuminated by the blue light of the screen. "Floyd," she said, her voice sharp as a razor, "this is not just fraud. This is conspiracy to commit capital murder. I am looking at the emails with the developer. Courtney has explicitly stated that the property will be vacant due to the owner's passing. She put it in writing. And Tyrell's gambling debts. This gives them motive, means, and opportunity. We have enough here to send the SWAT team through your front door within the hour." I shook my head. "No SWAT teams. No sirens. Not yet." "Why, Floyd?" Barbara asked, slamming the laptop shut. "They are killing you. Why do you want to wait?" "Because an arrest is too good for them," I said. My voice was low and guttural. "If we arrest them now, they will get bail. They will hire expensive lawyers with the money they stole from me. They will cry in court and say they were manipulated. Tyrell will play the victim. Courtney will play the grieving daughter-in-law. I do not want them in a cell for a few years. I want them destroyed. I want them to lose everything they think they have won." I stood up and walked to the window. I watched the rain falling on the streetlights. "I want them to think they have succeeded," I said. "I want them to stand at the finish line thinking they have won the gold medal, only to realize the ground has opened up beneath them. I want to see the look on Courtney's face when she realizes she is not a millionaire, but a pauper." Barbara looked at me for a long moment. She saw the look in my eyes. It was the same look her father used to have when a machine was dangerous and needed to be dismantled. "All right," she said, "we do it your way. But we need insurance. We need to make sure you survive the next 48 hours. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. It was a sketch I had made. "I need a watch," I said, "a replica." I had already called Russo, the antique dealer. He was waiting for us at his shop. We drove there in Barbara's car, leaving my truck parked on a side street. Russo had the shutters down, but the lights were on inside. The smell of oil and brass welcomed me back. On his workbench sat a watch. It was a Rolex Oyster Perpetual, gold case, black dial. It was identical to the one Tyrell had given me. "Is it clean?" I asked. Rousseau nodded. "I took the movement out of a broken donor watch. It keeps perfect time. But I made a few modifications like you asked." He handed it to me. It felt heavy. "I put lead weights inside the case back," Rousseau explained, "to match the weight of the shielded radioactive one. It feels exactly the same on the wrist. I also roughed up the strap slightly to match the wear pattern on your wrist. Unless they open it with a tool, they will never know the difference." I strapped it on. It felt cold and safe. It did not burn. It was just metal and glass. "Now for the ears," Barbara said. She produced a small black case from her bag. Inside were 3 tiny devices. They looked like small black buttons. "High-fidelity listening devices," she said. "They transmit directly to a cloud server. I will have a team monitoring the feed 24 hours a day. We will record every word they say, every whisper, every confession." I took the bugs. One would go under the dining room table, one behind the headboard of my bed, and one in Courtney's office. "What about the legal trap?" I asked. Barbara pulled a document from her briefcase. It was a thick stack of paper bound in a blue cover. "This is the revocable living trust," she said. "We drafted this 5 years ago, remember? The deed to your house is already in the name of the Jackson Family Trust. You are the primary trustee, but upon your death or incapacitation, the property does not go to your heirs. It goes to the charity we selected, the Inner City Youth Engineering Program." I smiled. It was a grim smile. I had forgotten about that. I had set it up to protect the house from creditors if my business ever failed. But now it was the ultimate weapon. "So even if I sign their power of attorney?" I asked. Barbara nodded. "Even if you sign it, even if they sell the house to the developer, the sale is void. They cannot sell what they do not own. The moment they try to close the deal, the title search will flag the trust. They will be on the hook for fraud with the developer and the bank. And since they took the deposit already," I added, thinking of Tyrell's debts. "Exactly," Barbara said. "They will be exposed on all fronts, financial, legal, and criminal." I took the papers. This was the plan. I would go back. I would play the dying man. I would let them abuse me for one more day. I would let them think the radiation was finishing the job. And then I would strike. "You need to look worse," the doctor said, handing me a small bottle of gray powder. It was theatrical makeup used for simulating illness. "Dust this on your skin. It will make you look ashen. And take these pills. They are mild beta blockers. They will lower your blood pressure and make your hands cold and clammy without killing you. It will sell the act to Courtney's doctor friend if he comes by. I took the bottle. I was not just a mechanic anymore. I was an actor in a tragedy. I drove back to the brownstone as the sun was coming up. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening. I felt a strange sense of calm. The fear was gone. The sadness was gone. There was only the mission. I parked the truck and slipped back into the house the same way I had left. I replaced the bugs in the dining room and the bedroom. I put the fake watch on my wrist and adjusted it so it sat right on the burn mark. Then I got into bed. I applied the gray powder. I swallowed the beta blocker. I lay back against the pillows and waited for the drugs to kick in. My heart rate slowed. My hands grew cold. I looked like death warmed over. I heard footsteps in the hall. It was Courtney, coming to check on her investment. "Let the show begin," I whispered to the empty room. The door opened. Courtney peeked in. When she saw me lying there, pale and still with the watch back on my wrist, a smile spread across her face. It was the smile of a predator who sees a limping gazelle. She did not know that the gazelle was actually a lion lying in the tall grass, and the lion was hungry for justice. The gray powder the doctor gave me tasted like chalk and smelled like old clay. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 5 in the morning, applying it to my face with a small sponge I had stolen from Courtney's makeup bag. I was not just putting on a disguise. I was painting a corpse, and the canvas was my own skin. I dabbed the powder into the hollows of my cheeks and under my eyes, creating deep shadows that screamed of organ failure. I had not eaten in 24 hours. The hunger was a sharp cramp in my stomach, but I welcomed it. It made my hands shake naturally. It made my voice sound thin and weak. I looked at the reflection. The man staring back at me was a ghost. I reached for the bottle of beta blockers. I took 2 pills, just as the doctor instructed. Within 20 minutes, I felt my heart rate drop. My extremities went cold. My fingertips felt like ice. It was a dangerous game playing with my own biology like this, but I had to pass the touch test. If Courtney grabbed my hand and felt warm blood pumping, she might get suspicious. She needed to feel the chill of the grave. Finally, I picked up the watch, the replica that Russo and Barbara had prepared. It sat on the cold porcelain of the sink, heavy and gold. It looked exactly like the weapon my son had strapped to my wrist a month ago. I put it on. The metal was cool against the raw burn mark on my skin. I flinched, not from pain but from the memory. I was voluntarily putting the shackles back on. I adjusted the strap so it covered the sore perfectly. I shuffled back to bed and pulled the heavy quilt up to my chin. I lay on my back, my breathing shallow, my eyes half closed. I was ready. I was the bait in the trap. At 8 o'clock, the invasion began. I heard the front door open. It was not just Courtney and Tyrell. There were heavy footsteps, boots, several men. I kept my eyes closed as the door to my bedroom pushed open. "He is out cold," Courtney said. Her voice was brisk and businesslike. "Do not worry about the noise. He is heavily sedated. Just get everything out." I opened my eyes just a crack. My vision was blurry, but I could see them. 2 men in blue coveralls were standing in the middle of my bedroom. They were movers, but they were not moving me. They were moving my life. "Start with the dresser," Courtney ordered, pointing a manicured finger at the antique oak chest that had belonged to my grandfather. "It is solid wood. It should fetch at least 500 at the auction house." I watched as the men walked over to the dresser. One of them spat his gum into a wrapper and stuck it in his pocket. He grabbed the handle of the drawer roughly. "Hey lady, there are still clothes in here," the mover said. "Just dump them," Courtney said, waving her hand dismissively. "We do not need them. Put them in trash bags. He will not be needing suits where he is going." My heart hammered against my ribs, but the beta blockers kept it from exploding. I watched as they pulled out my Sunday suits, the suits I wore to church, the suit I wore to my wife's funeral. They grabbed them by the hangers and stuffed them into black plastic garbage bags like they were raking leaves. "Tyrell," I rasped. My voice was barely a whisper. "Tyrell, what is happening?" Tyrell was standing by the window. He was looking out at the street, refusing to look at the room. When he heard my voice, he stiffened. "Go back to sleep, Dad," he mumbled. "We are just cleaning up, making space for medical equipment." Liar. Courtney walked over to the bed. She leaned down. Her face was a mask of false concern, but her eyes were darting to the watch on my wrist. She saw it. She saw the gold glinting. She smiled. "Shh, Dad," she said, patting my cheek. Her hand was warm. My cheek was cold. It worked. "Just rest. We are clearing out the clutter so you can breathe better. The dust is bad for your lungs." She turned back to the movers. "Take the chair too, and the rug." They took the leather armchair where I used to read bedtime stories to Tyrell. They rolled up the Persian rug I bought in Morocco 30 years ago. They stripped the room bare, leaving only the bed and the nightstand. But they did not stop at the bedroom. Through the open door, I could hear them moving through the rest of the house. I heard the heavy thud of furniture bumping against walls. I heard the screech of tape being pulled from the roll. Then I heard a sound that made my soul crack. A heavy, discordant twang. It was the sound of a piano being moved. My wife's Steinway. It sat in the living room downstairs. Clara had played that piano every evening for 40 years. It was the heart of this house. When she died, I kept it tuned every 6 months, just so I could run my fingers over the keys and imagine she was still there. "Courtney," I called out. "Not the piano, please." Courtney was busy tapping on her phone, scrolling through auction listings. She looked up, annoyed. "Dad, honestly," she sighed, "it takes up half the living room. Nobody plays it. It is just a dust collector. The antique dealer offered $3,000 for it. That pays for your nursing care for a week." "It is Clara's," I whispered. "Clara is gone, Dad," Courtney said, her voice sharp and cruel. "And you are, well, you are not in a position to play sonatas, are you?" She signaled to the men in the hall. "Take it. Be careful with the legs. I do not want scratches lowering the value." I lay there and listened as they wrestled the piano out the front door. I heard it bump against the door frame. I imagined the scratches on the polished wood. It felt like they were dragging my wife out of the house by her hair. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the IV drip from my arm, jump out of bed and break every bone in their bodies with my bare hands. The rage was a physical thing. It was a hot, molten ball in my chest, expanding and burning. I gripped the sheets so hard my fingernails tore through the fabric, but I did not move. I looked at the small black button hidden behind the headboard. The listening device Barbara had given me. It was recording everything. It was recording the sound of the movers. It was recording Courtney's callous orders. It was recording Tyrell's cowardly silence. Every item they took was another nail in their coffin. Every cruel word was another year added to their sentence. Tyrell walked back into the room. He looked pale. He held a cardboard box in his hands. "Courtney," he said, his voice trembling, "maybe we should keep the photo albums. There are pictures of me as a baby, pictures of Mom." Courtney snatched the box from him. She opened it and flipped through the pages. "Scanning these will take forever," she said. "And look at them, Tyrell. They are yellow and falling apart. Who looks at photo albums anymore? It is all digital now." She walked to the trash bag where my clothes were. She dumped the photo albums inside. "No, Tyrell," said, reaching out. "Stop it, Tyrell," Courtney hissed. "Do not get sentimental on me now. We are purging. We are starting fresh. Once he is gone, we renovate. New floors, open concept. No more dusty memories. Focus on the money. Focus on the 6 million. She threw the bag into the corner. I closed my eyes tight, squeezing out a single tear. It rolled down my cheek into the gray powder on my face, turning it into a muddy streak. "Let them take it all," I told myself. "Let them empty the house. Let them strip the walls." Because they were not just taking furniture, they were taking the last shreds of my mercy. I had struggled with the idea of sending my own son to prison. I had laid awake at night wondering if I was being too harsh, wondering if he could be redeemed. But as I watched him stand there and let his wife throw his mother's memories into a trash bag, I knew the answer. The boy I raised was dead. The man standing there was a stranger who would sell his past for a future that did not belong to him. I let my breathing hitch. I let out a low moan of pain. Courtney looked over. She checked her watch. "He is fading," she whispered to Tyrell. "Look at his color. He looks like ash." The doctor was right. It will not be long now. She walked to the door. "Come on, Tyrell. Let the movers finish. Let him rot in peace." They walked out. The room was empty now, echoing, cold. I lay alone in the center of the room. I was stripped of my possessions. I was stripped of my dignity. But inside, under the gray makeup and the cold skin, the fire was burning hotter than ever. I touched the fake watch on my wrist. Keep selling, Courtney, I thought. Sell it all. Because when the gavel comes down, you will realize that the only thing you really bought was a one-way ticket to a cell. I listened to the front door close as the truck drove away with my life in the back. And for the first time in days, I smiled. A cold, terrifying smile. Because now I had nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous man in the world. The house that had been stripped of my memories earlier that day was now being filled with strangers. At 7 o'clock, the guests began to arrive. I lay in my bed upstairs, listening to the sounds of celebration rising through the floorboards. It was not a party, it was a victory lap. Courtney had not even waited for my body to go cold before popping the champagne corks. She had invited her entire circle of real estate sharks and investors to my home to toast her success. I could hear the clinking of crystal glasses and the sharp, artificial laughter that sounded like breaking glass. I turned my head on the pillow and looked at the small baby monitor I had hidden under the nightstand. It was connected to the listening device I had planted under the dining room table downstairs. The sound quality was crystal clear. It picked up every whisper, every insult, every drop of venom they spit out. I pressed the record button on my device. The red light blinked steadily in the darkness, like an unblinking eye. Downstairs, the party was in full swing. I could picture it perfectly. They were probably standing in my living room, where my wife's piano used to be, holding their expensive drinks and admiring the architecture they were planning to bulldoze. "This place is a gold mine, Courtney," one voice said. A man, deep and booming. It sounded like the developer from the email. "The location alone is worth $5 million, but getting it vacated so quickly, that is impressive. How did you manage it with the old man still living here?" I heard Courtney's laugh. It was a light, tinkling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Oh, it was a challenge," she said. "He is very attached to the place. You know how these old people are. They hold on to things. But we came to an understanding. He realized that a nursing facility would be better for his specific health needs." Specific health needs, that was code for radiation poisoning. I heard another voice, a woman this time. "But isn't he still upstairs? Is it safe to have us all here? I mean, isn't it awkward?" "He is sedated," Courtney replied breezily. "He sleeps 20 hours a day. He won't bother us. Besides, this is his farewell party in a way. We are celebrating his transition." Transition. Like I was a project to be managed, not a human being. I felt a surge of nausea that had nothing to do with the beta blockers. These people were talking about me like I was a stain on the carpet that they had finally managed to scrub out. They were drinking wine in the house I built, celebrating my murder, and they did not even have the decency to lower their voices. I focused on Tyrell's voice. I needed to hear him. I needed to know if there was any shred of my son left in that room. "Hey Tyrell," someone called out. "You were quiet tonight, man. Drink up. You were about to be a very rich man." I heard the clink of a bottle hitting a glass. Tyrell sounded slurred when he spoke. "Yeah," he muttered. "Rich. That is the plan." "You do not sound happy about it," the man said. "Come on. Do not tell me you are going to miss this dump. It smells like old grease and cabbage. Once you get that check, you can buy a penthouse in Manhattan. You can get a real car. Get rid of that junk you drive." "It is not junk," Tyrell said defensively. "My dad bought me that car." "Oh, please," Courtney cut in. Her voice was sharp. "Do not start with the sentimental garbage again, Tyrell. That car is an embarrassment, just like this house, just like your debts. We are fixing your mistakes, Tyrell. We are cleaning up your mess. You should be thanking me, not sulking in the corner." There was a silence, a heavy, uncomfortable silence. Then I heard the sound of liquid being poured. "I am not sulking," Tyrell said. His voice was louder now, angry. "I am just thinking about what the developer asked, thinking about the price," Tyrell said. "The price is $6.2 million, the developer laughed. "That is a hell of a price, son. You won't get a better offer in this market." "Not that price," Tyrell snapped. "I mean the other price, the real price." I held my breath. My heart hammered against my ribs. He was getting close to the edge. The alcohol was loosening his tongue. "What are you talking about, Tyrell?" Courtney warned. "You are drunk. Stop talking." "I am not drunk," Tyrell shouted. "I am just saying, it costs a lot. Being rich costs a lot." I closed my eyes and visualized him. He was probably swaying slightly, his face flushed, his eyes wet. He was weak. He had always been weak. But tonight that weakness was my greatest weapon. "You know what this watch cost?" he asked suddenly. I froze. "Tyrell, no," Courtney hissed. He was talking about his own watch, the flashy gold one he wore, but I knew where his mind was going. "This watch costs $5,000, he said, "but the one upstairs, the one on the old man's wrist, that one is priceless." A hush fell over the room. "What do you mean, priceless?" the developer asked. "It is just an old Rolex, isn't it?" Tyrell laughed, a bitter, jagged sound. "It is not a Rolex, it is a time machine. It counts down. It counts down to 0, and when it hits 0, boom. No more debts, no more old man, just us, and the money." "Tyrell, shut up," Courtney screamed. Her voice cracked with panic, but he did not stop. He was on a roll now, fueled by scotch and guilt. "My wife is a genius, you know," he rambled. "She found a way to solve all our problems with a little piece of metal, a little piece of the sun. It burns, you know. It burns right through the skin, but you cannot see it. It is invisible fire." I pressed the headphones closer to my ears. This was it, the confession. He was practically drawing a map to the crime. Courtney must have realized it too, because I heard the sound of glass shattering. "Get him out of here," she shrieked. "He is delirious. He has had too much to drink. Put him in the guest room." I heard shuffling, a scuffle, Tyrell shouting something incoherent about heat and cancer. Then the sound of a door slamming. The room downstairs went quiet. "I am so sorry, everyone," Courtney said. Her voice was trembling, but she regained her composure quickly. "The stress of his father's illness, it has been hard on him. He does not know what he is saying." "Oh, we understand, my dear," the developer said smoothly. "It is a difficult time. End-of-life care is messy. But do not worry. We are still on schedule for the 1st, right?" "Yes," Courtney said. "Absolutely. He will be gone by the 1st. I guarantee it." I clicked the stop button on the recorder. I had it. I had the developer acknowledging the deadline. I had Courtney guaranteeing my death. And I had Tyrell ranting about the invisible fire in the watch. It was enough to bury them. It was enough to put them away for life. But I was not done. I pulled the covers off. The gray powder on my face felt tight. The beta blockers made my legs feel like wood. But I stood up. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. I saw the expensive cars parked in front of my house. I saw the drivers waiting. They were celebrating my end. But they did not know that the clock had already started ticking for them. I looked at the fake watch on my wrist. It was 9 o'clock. Tomorrow morning they would come for the signature. They would come to finish me off. I touched the cold glass of the watch face. "Come and get it," I whispered. I went back to bed, but I did not sleep. I lay there listening to the party die down, listening to the guests leave one by one, until only the silence remained. The silence of a house that was waiting for Judgment Day. The morning light hit the bare floorboards of my bedroom with a harsh, revealing glare. Without the curtains and the furniture to soften it, the room felt like an interrogation cell. I lay in the center of the mattress, looking at the dust motes dancing in the sunbeams. I had been awake for hours, preparing myself for the final act of this tragedy. The beta blockers had done their work. My hands were ice cold, and my pulse was slow and thready. I felt like a machine running on its reserve battery, but my mind was sharp. My mind was a steel trap waiting to snap shut. I let out a groan. It was a practiced sound, low and rattling. I waited. I did not have to wait long. They were likely standing just outside the door, hovering like vultures waiting for the animal to stop kicking. "Tyrell," I called out. My voice was a thin, scratchy whisper. "Courtney." The door opened immediately. They did not knock. You do not knock on the door of a man you have already evicted from the world. Courtney entered first. She was wearing a bright yellow dress. It was a cheerful color, a celebration color. It made me sick to look at it. She was holding the clipboard against her chest like a shield. "We are here, Dad," she said. Her voice was too loud, too bright. "How are you feeling today?" I turned my head slowly on the pillow. The movement took effort, not because I was weak, but because I had to sell the weakness. "I am tired, Courtney," I whispered. "I am so tired. I just wanted to stop." Courtney exchanged a look with Tyrell. He was standing behind her, looking at his shoes. He looked hungover. His eyes were bloodshot, and his skin was pasty. The guilt and the whiskey from the night before were eating him alive. "We know, Dad," Courtney said, stepping closer to the bed. "We know you were tired. That is why we want to help you rest. Remember what we talked about. The papers. If you sign them, we can handle everything. You will not have to worry about bills or the house or anything. You can just sleep." She held out the clipboard. The power of attorney document was clipped to the front. Behind it, I knew, was the deed transfer. They were trying to get everything in one fell swoop. I looked at Tyrell. "Son, come here." Tyrell shuffled forward. He stayed out of arm's reach. He was afraid to touch me. He was afraid of the invisible fire he had strapped to my wrist. "Do you want this, Tyrell?" I asked. "Do you really want this?" Tyrell looked at Courtney. She glared at him, a silent command. "It is for the best, Dad," Tyrell mumbled. "We just want to take care of you." I closed my eyes. The betrayal was absolute. There was no going back now. "Help me sit up," I said. Courtney rushed forward. She put her hands under my shoulders and hauled me up. She was strong, impatient. She propped the pillows behind me, not for comfort, but to give me a surface to write on. "Here is the pen," she said. She uncapped it and shoved it into my hand. I looked at the pen. It was a heavy, expensive fountain pen, probably one she had bought with my credit card. I held it in my right hand, my dominant hand, the hand I had used to sign checks and birthday cards and contracts for 40 years. But today, I was not Floyd Jackson the mechanic. I was Floyd Jackson the victim. I let my right hand tremble violently. The pen rattled against the clipboard. I made the tip of the pen dance across the paper, leaving meaningless scratches. "I cannot," I gasped. "My hand. It will not work." Courtney let out a huff of frustration. "Try harder, Dad. Just focus." "I cannot hold it," I whined, dropping the pen onto the sheets. "I have no grip." Courtney picked up the pen. Her jaw was tight. She was losing patience. The clock was ticking. The developer was waiting. "Use your other hand," she snapped. "Just make a mark. An X is enough. We can have the notary witness it." I looked at her. "Use my other hand." She was so desperate, she did not care about the legality. A signature made with a non-dominant hand under duress by a medicated man. It was the definition of invalid, but she did not care. She just needed ink on paper. I reached out with my left hand. My left hand was clumsy. I had never learned to write with it. This was perfect. "Give it to me," I said. She placed the pen in my left fingers. I gripped it awkwardly, like a child holding a crayon. "Where do I sign?" I asked, blinking, as if my vision was failing. "Right here," she said, pointing to the line. "Next to your printed name." I lowered the pen. I felt the adrenaline spiking in my chest. This was the moment. I pressed the nib to the paper. I did not sign Floyd Jackson. I did not even try to imitate my signature. I dragged the pen across the paper in a jagged, erratic line. It looked like a seismograph reading of an earthquake. It looked like F, L, and then a trailing line that dipped off the page. "Is that good enough?" I whispered, dropping the pen. Courtney stared at the scrawl. It was hideous. It was barely legible. But to her it looked like $6 million. "It is perfect, Dad," she said. She snatched the clipboard away before I could change my mind. "It is absolutely perfect." She handed the clipboard to Tyrell. "Go give this to the notary. He is waiting in the kitchen. Tell him to stamp it." Tyrell took the clipboard. He looked at the signature. He looked at me. For a second I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He knew my signature. He knew this was not it. But he turned and walked toward the door. "Tyrell, wait," I said. He stopped. He did not turn around. "I need water," I said. "My throat burns." Courtney sighed. "I will get it. Tyrell, go." "No," I said sharply. "I want my son to get it." Courtney rolled her eyes. "Fine. Hurry up, Tyrell." Tyrell put the clipboard on the dresser and walked to the bathroom to fill a glass of water. Courtney busied herself checking her phone, probably texting the developer that the deal was done. When Tyrell came back with the water, his hand was shaking. Water sloshed over the rim. He held the glass to my lips. I took a sip. Then I reached out and grabbed his wrist. My grip was strong, much stronger than a dying man's grip should be. Tyrell flinched. He tried to pull away, but I held on. I pulled him down close to me. "Tyrell," I whispered. My voice was low, a rasping sound that came from the back of my throat. "What is it, Dad?" he whispered back. His eyes were wide with fear. "The watch," I said. Tyrell froze. "What about the watch?" "It is hot, Tyrell," I whispered. "It is so hot today. I can feel it. It feels like fire inside my bones." I saw the pupil of his eye contract. He stopped breathing. "And you know what else, son?" I continued leaning closer until my lips were almost touching his ear. "When you are this close to me, I think it burns you too." Tyrell yanked his arm back. He stumbled backward, hitting the wall. The glass of water fell from his hand and shattered on the floor. "What happened?" Courtney whipped around. "Tyrell, what are you doing?" He grabbed me," Tyrell stammered. "He is burning up. He said he is burning." Courtney looked at me. I was lying back on the pillows, my eyes closed, my chest heaving. I looked harmless. "He is just having a fever, Tyrell," she snapped. "Get a grip. Pick up that glass." "No," Tyrell said. He was rubbing his wrist where I had touched him. He was rubbing it frantically, as if he could wipe away the radiation. "I need to wash my hands. I need to wash my hands right now." He ran into the bathroom and slammed the door. I heard the water running. I heard him scrubbing. Courtney looked at the bathroom door and then at me. She shook her head in disgust. "You are making him crazy," she hissed at me. "Even when you are dying, you are still a burden." I did not answer. I just lay there and listened to the water running. I had planted the seed. Tyrell knew what was in that watch. He knew it was cobalt-60, and now he believed that the poison was spreading. He believed that by killing me, he was killing himself. Courtney grabbed the clipboard from the dresser. "Rest in peace, Dad," she said. Her voice was dripping with sarcasm. "Because we are certainly going to enjoy the peace once you are gone." She walked out of the room. I waited until I heard her footsteps fade down the stairs. Then I opened my eyes. I looked at the shattered glass on the floor. It sparkled in the sunlight like diamonds. "You have the paper, Courtney," I thought, "but it is worthless, just like you. And Tyrell, you have the fear now. And fear is a sickness that kills faster than any radiation." I sat up and wiped the fake sweat from my forehead. The first part of the plan was complete. They thought they had the power. They thought they had the control. But tonight the watch comes off, and tomorrow the real power would be revealed. The sirens were the first thing I heard. They started as a distant wail, like a crying child, and grew louder until they filled the entire room with a pulsing red and white light that danced across the ceiling. I lay on the bed with my eyes closed, listening to the chaos I had orchestrated. Tyrell was pacing in the hallway, his footsteps heavy and uneven. He was still scrubbing his hands in his mind, trying to wash away the invisible fire I had planted there. Courtney was standing by the window, practicing her performance. I heard her take a deep breath and then let out a sob. It was a perfect, theatrical sob. If she had put this much effort into selling houses, she might actually be successful. "Oh God, please hurry," she screamed toward the door, even though the paramedics were not even up the stairs yet. "My father is not breathing right. Please, someone help him." She turned back to look at me. Her face was dry. Her eyes were calculating. She checked her phone one last time, probably sending a confirmation text to the developer. Then she shoved the phone into her pocket and rushed to the bedside as the heavy tread of boots hit the landing. "Over here," she cried, waving her hands. He collapsed. He was signing some papers, and he just slumped over. "I think it is his heart, or a stroke. He has been so sick." Two paramedics burst into the room. They were young, fast, and efficient. One was a tall Hispanic man, the other a woman with her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. They did not look at Courtney. They looked at the patient. They looked at me. "Sir, can you hear me?" the woman asked, shining a light into my eyes. I let my eyelids flutter. I moaned. It was a low, guttural sound that required no acting. My body was genuinely exhausted. The beta blockers made my heart feel like a slow drum in a deep cave. "He is unresponsive," Courtney sobbed, grabbing the paramedic's arm. Her nails dug into his uniform. "You have to save him. He is the only family we have left." "Ma'am, I need you to step back," the paramedic said firmly, pushing her away. "We need room to work." They ripped open my pajama shirt. Cold pads were slapped onto my chest. I felt the pressure of a blood pressure cuff tightening around my arm. "BP is 80/50, the woman called out. "Pulse is thready. He is bradycardic. We need to move him now." They grabbed the sheet under me. 1, 2, 3, lift. I was hoisted into the air. The world spun. I saw Tyrell standing in the doorway. He looked like a zombie. He was staring at my wrist. My wrist was covered by the long sleeve of my pajama top. He could not see if the watch was there or not, but I could see the terror in his eyes. He wanted me out of the house. He wanted the radiation out of the house. "We are taking him to St. Mary's," the male paramedic shouted as they wheeled me toward the stairs. "I am coming with him," Courtney announced. She grabbed her purse. "I am his medical proxy. I have the papers." She followed us down the stairs. The ride down was bumpy. My head bounced against the stretcher. I saw the pictures on the wall vibrating. The pictures of a family that did not exist anymore. We burst out onto the street. The cool air hit my face. The neighbors were watching. Mrs. Higgins from next door was standing on her porch with her hand over her mouth. Courtney made sure to wail loudly as they loaded me into the back of the ambulance. "Dad, hang on, Dad," she cried, climbing in after me. The doors slammed shut, sealing us in a metal box that smelled of antiseptic and diesel fumes. The siren wailed again, and we began to move. I lay strapped to the gurney. The female paramedic was hooking up an IV line to my left arm. Courtney sat on the bench opposite me. Her face was inches from mine. The paramedic was busy adjusting the flow of the saline drip. Courtney leaned forward. She was not looking at my face. She was looking at my right arm, which was strapped down to the side of the rail. The sleeve had pulled up slightly. I felt her hand brush against my skin. It was subtle. She was pretending to hold my hand for comfort, but her fingers were searching. She was feeling for the cold, hard metal of the Rolex. She ran her fingers up my wrist. She froze. I kept my eyes closed, but I could feel her panic radiating off her like heat. She squeezed my wrist harder. Her thumb pressed into my pulse point. She pushed the sleeve up further frantically. Nothing. My wrist was bare. I heard a sharp intake of breath. It sounded like a tire being punctured. "Where is it?" she whispered. It was so quiet the paramedic did not hear it over the siren. She let go of my hand and started patting the blanket covering my legs. She was looking for a bulge, a lump, anything that felt like a heavy gold watch. "Ma'am, please do not touch the patient," the paramedic said without looking up. I just wanted to make sure he was warm," Courtney stammered. Her voice was an octave higher than usual. She looked at me. Her eyes were wide and wild. She was doing the math in her head. If the watch was not on my wrist, where was it? Did it fall off in the bedroom? Did the movers take it? Did Tyrell take it? Or worse, did I take it off? If I took it off, that meant I knew. I let out a groan and shifted on the stretcher. I opened my eyes just a sliver. I looked right at her. I saw the sweat breaking out on her upper lip. "Courtney," I mumbled. "Dad," she hissed, leaning in close. "The watch. Where is the watch?" "What?" I whispered. "The watch you were wearing," she said, her teeth clenched. "The gold one. Where is it?" I don't know," I said, letting my head loll to the side. It was heavy. It hurt. "Did you take it off?" she asked, her voice trembling with urgency. "Did you leave it at the house?" I closed my eyes again, feigning unconsciousness. I enjoyed the sound of her hyperventilating. She was trapped. She could not ask the paramedic to stop the ambulance so she could look for a piece of jewelry. She could not call Tyrell because the paramedic was sitting right there. She had to sit there and stew in her own terror. The ambulance turned a corner sharply. Equipment rattled. If the watch was at the house, the police would find it when I died. If the watch was lost in the ambulance, a stranger would find it and get sick. If the watch was sold by the movers, the trail would lead back to her. She needed that watch to be buried with me. It was the only way to hide the murder weapon. We arrived at the hospital. The back doors flew open. The noise of the city rushed in. Male 68. Possible cardiac event history of radiation exposure. I heard the paramedic shout to the triage team. "Wait," Courtney yelled, scrambling out of the ambulance. "What did you say?" "History of radiation exposure," the paramedic repeated as they unloaded me. "It is in his file. The urgent care report from yesterday." Courtney stopped dead on the pavement. Her face went white. She did not know about the urgent care visit. She thought I had been in bed all day. She ran after the stretcher. "Wait, that is a mistake. He has the flu. He is confused. We are running a full toxicity screen, ma'am," a doctor in a white coat said, stepping between Courtney and the gurney. "You need to wait in the lobby." "No, I need to be with him," Courtney screamed. She tried to push past the doctor. I have power of attorney. I have the papers. Security, the doctor shouted. Two large guards in uniform stepped forward, blocking her path. You can wait in the designated area, ma'am, one guard said. Let the doctors work. I was wheeled through the double doors. I turned my head to look back. I saw Courtney standing in the ambulance bay, alone. She looked small. She looked terrified. She was frantically digging through her purse, probably looking for her phone to warn Tyrell. But it was too late. The doors swung shut, cutting her off. I was moved into a trauma room. The air was cold. The lights were bright. Nurses swarmed around me, cutting off my clothes. When they cut the sleeve of my pajama shirt, the nurse paused. Doctor, she said, pointing to my wrist. Look at this burn. The doctor leaned in. It looks like a radiation burn. Get the Geiger counter, now. I lay there, staring at the ceiling tiles. I knew the Geiger counter would not pick up anything from me. The fake watch was safely hidden in the pocket of the robe that the movers had packed into the donation bag earlier. I had slipped it in there right before I got into bed. It was probably on its way to a Goodwill in Queens by now. But the real watch, the deadly one, that was in Barbara's safe. I smiled internally. Outside in the waiting room, I knew Courtney was making a phone call. I knew exactly what she was saying. Tyrell, tear the house apart. Find the watch. If the police find it, we are dead. But Tyrell would not find it. And Courtney would not find it. They were chasing a ghost. And while they were chasing ghosts, I was about to hand the police a map to the graveyard. Mr. Jackson, can you hear me? The doctor asked. Yes, I whispered. Do you know what happened to you? I took a deep breath. It was the first breath of fresh air I had taken in months. I was poisoned, I said clearly. My son and his wife poisoned me. The doctor froze. The nurses stopped moving. Call the police, I said. I have proof. The game was over. The hunt had begun. The trauma room was a box of stainless steel and harsh white light that left no shadows for secrets to hide in. I lay on the gurney with monitors beeping a steady rhythm beside me. My heart rate was normalizing as the beta blockers began to wear off, but my mind was racing faster than ever. Through the open blinds of the glass partition, I could see into the hallway. It was a fishbowl, and outside the sharks were beginning to realize they were trapped in the net. Dr. Evans, the emergency room attending physician, walked out of my room. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a face that did not suffer fools. He held a clipboard in his hand like a weapon. I watched as he approached Courtney, who was pacing frantically near the nurse's station. She was still trying to play the role of the concerned daughter-in-law, but the cracks in her mask were showing. Her mascara was smudged, and she was chewing on her thumbnail, a nervous tic I had never seen before. Mrs. Miller, the doctor said, his voice booming enough that I could hear it through the glass. Courtney spun around. Her eyes were wide and desperate. Doctor, how is he? Is it his heart? When can I take him home? The doctor did not smile. He did not offer a comforting hand. He stopped 3 feet away from her, maintaining a professional distance that felt more like a barrier. It is not his heart, Mrs. Miller, the doctor said. We have completed the initial toxicology screen and reviewed the medical history sent over by the urgent care clinic. Courtney froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She had forgotten about the urgent care visit. She thought she had controlled every aspect of my medical history. The doctor continued, his voice cold and clinical. Your father-in-law is suffering from acute radiation syndrome, caused by prolonged exposure to a high-intensity gamma source, specifically cobalt-60. The words hung in the air like smoke. Radiation, Courtney stammered, letting out a nervous laugh that sounded like a bark. That is ridiculous. He is a retired mechanic. He does not work in a nuclear power plant. He has the flu. He is confused. The doctor took a step closer. The flu does not cause your white blood cell count to drop to near zero, Mrs. Miller. The flu does not cause specific ionizing burns on the wrist. We found the burn pattern. It is perfectly circular, consistent with something worn on the body, like a watch. Courtney took a step back. She bumped into a crash cart. Her hands were shaking. I do not know what you are talking about, she said, her voice rising in pitch. He must have picked up something old at a flea market. He buys junk all the time. That is a matter for the authorities, the doctor said. Given the severity of the injury and the nature of the substance, we were required to contact the Department of Homeland Security and the local police. This is now a crime scene. Courtney looked at the exit doors. I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was calculating the distance. She was wondering if she could run. But she was wearing heels, and she was a coward. Cowards do not run when they are cornered. They freeze. And then the doors opened. It was not just security. It was 2 uniformed officers and 2 detectives in plain clothes. And walking between them, looking like a man marching to the gallows, was Tyrell. My son looked terrible. He was still wearing the clothes from the night before, rumpled and stained with sweat. His face was the color of old dough. His hands were red and raw from scrubbing. He saw Courtney, and he looked at her with eyes full of terror. Tyrell Courtney gasped. "What are you doing here?" "They came to the house," Tyrell mumbled, his voice hollow. "They kicked the door in, Courtney. They were looking for the source. They were looking for the watch." Courtney lunged at him, grabbing his lapels. Her face was twisted into a snarl. "Shut up. Do not say a word." One of the detectives stepped forward. He was an older man with tired eyes and a badge clipped to his belt. He pulled Courtney's hands off Tyrell. "Mrs. Courtney Miller," the detective said, "I need you to step away from him." "I want a lawyer," Courtney screamed, backing away. "This is harassment. My father-in-law is sick, and you are dragging my husband here like a criminal." "We are not dragging him, ma'am," the detective said calmly. "He agreed to come voluntarily to help us locate a missing radioactive device. A device that poses a threat to public safety. Do you know where it is?" Courtney looked at me through the glass. Our eyes met. I was not playing dead anymore. I was sitting up slightly on the gurney, watching her. I let a small, cold smile touch my lips. It was the only message she needed. "He knows," she whispered. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "Look at him. He is not sick. He is smiling. He set us up." The detective looked at me, then back at Courtney. "Ma'am, Mr. Jackson is the victim here. He has been poisoned. Now answer the question. Where is the watch?" "It is gone," Courtney yelled, throwing her hands up. "It is gone, okay? It disappeared. He probably hid it. Ask him." Tyrell spoke up then. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise of the emergency room. "It is not gone, Courtney." Courtney spun on him. "Shut up, Tyrell." "No," Tyrell said. He was shaking his head back and forth. "I can feel it. It is still burning me. I washed my hands 10 times, but I can still feel it." He held up his raw, red hands to the detective. "I did not want to do it. She made me. She said it was the only way to pay the debt. She said it would look like cancer." Courtney let out a shriek of rage. She lunged at Tyrell, her nails aimed at his face. "You weak, pathetic idiot. Keep your mouth shut." The police officers moved fast. They grabbed Courtney by the arms. She fought them, kicking and screaming like a trapped animal. Her expensive blazer tore at the shoulder. Her hair came loose from its perfect bun. "Let me go," she screamed. "I am a respectable businesswoman. I have rights. That old man is crazy. He is trying to frame me." The detective took out a pair of handcuffs. They were silver and shiny under the hospital lights. "Courtney Miller, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and possession of a prohibited hazardous substance." He snapped the cuffs on her wrists. The sound was loud and final. Click, click. Courtney stopped screaming. She looked down at the metal bracelets. The reality of it finally hit her. The $6 million, the shopping mall deal, the penthouse in Manhattan. It all evaporated in that second, leaving her with nothing but cold steel and a prison sentence. She looked at Tyrell. "Help me," she begged. Tell them it was his idea." Tyrell looked at her, and for the first time in his life he did not do what she said. He looked at me through the glass. He saw his father, the man he had tried to kill, lying on a hospital bed. He saw the disappointment in my eyes. It was a weight heavier than any debt. "I am sorry, Dad." Tyrell sobbed, his knees giving out. He sank to the floor, right there in the middle of the ER, covering his face with his scrubbed raw hands. "I am so sorry." The police hauled Courtney away. She was dragged past my window, her heels scraping against the linoleum. She looked at me one last time. There was no arrogance left, only fear, pure, unadulterated fear. I watched them go. I watched the doors swing shut behind them. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was clean. The poison was gone. Not the radiation in my blood, but the poison in my life. Dr. Evans walked into my room. He checked the monitor. His face was softer now, less clinical. "Mr. Jackson," he said, The police will want a statement when you are up to it. I am up to it now, I said, sitting up fully. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. You should rest, the doctor said. Your body has been through a lot. I have been resting for too long, Doc, I said, standing up. My legs were shaky, but they held me. I have been asleep for years, letting them run my life. I am finally awake. I walked to the window and looked out at the ambulance bay. I saw the police car lights flashing red and blue, reflecting off the wet pavement. I saw Courtney being shoved into the back of a cruiser. I saw Tyrell being led into another car, his head hung low. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was not joy. You do not feel joy when you send your own son to prison. It was relief. It was the feeling of setting down a heavy load that you have carried for miles. They were gone. The house was safe. The legacy was safe. I turned back to the doctor. Is there a phone I can use? I asked. I need to call my lawyer, and then I need to call a locksmith. The doctor smiled, a small, tight smile. I think we can arrange that. I sat down in the chair by the window. I looked at my wrist. The fake watch was gone, lost in the shuffle of the ambulance ride. My wrist was bare, showing the ugly red burn mark. It would leave a scar, a permanent reminder of how close I came to the edge. But scars are good. Scars mean you survived. Scars mean you healed. I looked at the empty doorway where my son had stood moments ago. Goodbye, Tyrell, I whispered. I hope you find redemption, but you will have to find it somewhere else, because my door is closed. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes, waiting for the detectives to come in with their notepads. I had a long story to tell them, a story about time and money and the things that really matter. And for the first time in a month, I was not afraid of what tomorrow would bring. The conference room at the hospital had been commandeered by the police. It was a stark room with beige walls and a long laminate table that now served as the altar for my family's destruction. I sat at the head of the table, wrapped in a hospital blanket, still playing the part of the frail victim. Courtney and Tyrell sat on the opposite side, handcuffed to their chairs. A detective stood against the wall, his arms crossed. But the person who commanded the room was not the police. It was Barbara Davis. She walked in like a storm front, wearing a black trench coat and carrying a briefcase that looked heavy enough to crush bone. But it was what she carried in her other hand that made the air in the room drop 10 degrees. It was the lead-lined box from Russo's antique shop. She placed it on the table with a dull, heavy thud that vibrated through the floor. Courtney looked at the box, and her face went the color of milk. She knew what was inside. She tried to look away, but she could not. It drew her gaze like a magnet. Mrs. Miller. Barbara began, her voice calm and sharp. You claimed earlier that the watch was lost. You claimed it was just a harmless gift. Courtney lifted her chin, trying to muster one last shred of arrogance. It was lost. My father-in-law is senile. He loses everything. Barbara smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a hunter who has just sprung the trap. We found it, Barbara said. Or rather, Mr. Jackson ensured it was never lost. She unlatched the heavy lid of the box. She did not touch the watch inside. She simply nudged the box open so everyone could see. There it lay, the gold Rolex. Innocuous, beautiful, deadly. The detective stepped forward with a Geiger counter. He turned it on. Before he even got close to the box, the machine began to click. As he moved the wand over the open lid, the clicking turned into a scream. The needle slammed into the red. Courtney flinched, physically recoiling in her chair. Tyrell started to cry, a low, pathetic, sobbing sound. This watch, Barbara continued, raising her voice over the sound of the machine, contains a high-grade pellet of cobalt-60. We traced the serial number on the casing of the source. It did not come from a flea market. It came from the decommissioned X-ray machine at the dental practice owned by your late father, Mrs. Miller. A practice where you still hold the keys to the storage unit. Courtney shook her head violently. That proves nothing. Anyone could have broken in. Barbara reached into her briefcase. She pulled out a laptop and set it on the table. We also have the audio logs, Barbara said. You see, Mr. Jackson was not just suffering in silence. He was listening. She pressed a button. The sound of the party from the night before filled the room. The quality was crystal clear. It is not a Rolex. Tyrell's voice boomed from the speakers, slurred and arrogant. It is a time machine. It counts down to 0, and when it hits 0, boom. No more debts, no more old man. The silence that followed the recording was deafening. Tyrell looked like he wanted to vomit. Courtney looked like she wanted to kill him. And finally, Barbara said, pulling out a single sheet of paper sealed in a plastic evidence bag, "We have the power of attorney document you tried to force Mr. Jackson to sign this morning." She slid the bag down the table toward the detective. "We had a handwriting expert analyze this within the last hour," Barbara said. "The signature is a mess, but more importantly, the pen used to sign it was wiped clean of prints. However, the clipboard it was resting on has prints from both Mrs. Miller and Mr. Jackson, and the pressure marks on the paper indicate that the pen was forced into the hand of the signatory. This is not a legal document. It is evidence of coercion and elder abuse." The detective looked at Courtney. "Mrs. Miller, you are looking at charges of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and fraud. This is a life sentence." Courtney cracked. The mask of the successful real estate agent fell away, revealing the terrified criminal underneath. She turned on Tyrell. "It was him," she shrieked, pulling at her handcuffs. "He did it. He owes money to loan sharks. He came to me begging for help. He said his father was going to die anyway, so why not speed it up? I just tried to help him. I am a victim here." Tyrell looked up. His eyes were red and swollen. For the first time in his life, he saw his wife clearly. He saw the monster he had married. "You liar!" Tyrell screamed, his voice cracking. "You planned everything. You found the cobalt. You contacted the developer. You told me that if I did not do it, you would leave me and take everything." He turned to the detective, desperate to save his own skin. "I can testify against her. I have the emails. I have the texts. She made me do it." "Enough," I said. My voice was not a whisper anymore. It was deep and resonant, the voice of a man who had commanded shop floors for 40 years. I stood up. I did not struggle. I did not shake. I stood up straight and tall, letting the hospital blanket fall from my shoulders. I reached up and pulled the oxygen cannula from my nose, throwing it onto the table. I wiped the gray powder from my cheek with the back of my hand, revealing the dark, healthy skin beneath. The room went silent. Courtney stared at me, her mouth hanging open. Tyrell stopped crying and looked at me with a mixture of awe and horror. "You are not sick," Courtney whispered. "I am hurt, Courtney," I said, walking slowly around the table until I stood directly behind her chair. "My heart is broken, my spirit is bruised, but my body is just fine." I looked down at her. "You thought I was a foolish old man. You thought because I work with my hands and live in an old house that I was stupid. You thought you could walk into my life and dismantle it like a used car." I walked over to Tyrell. He flinched as I got close, but I did not touch him. I just looked at him. "And you," I said softly, "my son, the boy I carried on my shoulders, the boy I taught to be a man." "Dad," Tyrell whimpered. "I am sorry. Sorry does not fix this, Tyrell," I said, my voice hardening. "You sold me. You did not just try to kill me. You traded my life for a check to pay off a gambling debt. You looked at the man who gave you life, and you saw a dollar sign." I leaned in close so he could see the fire in my eyes. "You talked about time last night, Tyrell. You said the watch was counting down. You were right, but it was not counting down my time. It was counting down yours." I walked back to the head of the table and turned to face them both. "You wanted my house. You wanted to tear it down and build a shopping mall. You wanted to erase the history of my family, to put up a glass door for strangers to walk through." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the deed to the house, the copy Barbara had given me. "You killed me for nothing," I said, holding up the paper. "This house does not belong to me. It belongs to a trust. It has belonged to a trust for 5 years. Even if I had died, you would not have seen a single penny. The house goes to charity. It goes to help kids who actually want to build something, not destroy it." Courtney let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. It was the sound of greed dying a painful death. $6 million, she moaned, rocking back and forth. $6 million. "It was never about the money for me," I said. "It was about legacy. I built that house with sweat. I paid for it with years of my life. And I thought I was building it for you, Tyrell. I thought I was building a foundation for you to stand on. But you did not want a foundation. You wanted a quick exit." I looked at the detective. "Take them away." "No, Dad, wait," Tyrell begged as the officer pulled him up. "Please, I am your son. Do not let them take me." I looked at him one last time. My face was stone. "My son died a month ago," I said. "He died the day he put a radioactive watch on my wrist and smiled. I do not know who you are, but you were about to have a lot of time to think about him." The officers hauled them out. Courtney was kicking and screaming, cursing my name, cursing the watch, cursing the world. Tyrell was limp, dragging his feet, weeping like a child. I watched them go until the door closed and the silence returned to the room. Barbara walked over and closed the lid of the lead box. She latched it tight, sealing the poison away. "It is over, Floyd," she said gently. I looked at my wrist, where the red burn mark was still angry and raw. It would heal, but the memory would always be there. "Yes," I said, "it is over." I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the buildings. I had lost my family. I had lost the illusion of love, but I had kept my life, and I had kept my dignity. I turned back to Barbara. "Let us go home," I said. "I have a lock to change, and I have a dog to adopt. I think I am done with people for a while." We walked out of the hospital together, leaving the conference room empty. The lead box sat on the table, a heavy, silent monument to the greed that almost killed me. But almost does not count. I was still standing, and as long as I was standing, I was going to live, not for them, but for me. The sound of handcuffs snapping shut is a sound you never forget. It is sharp and final, like the closing of a coffin lid. I stood by the conference room window, watching the scene unfold in the hospital hallway. It was a parade of shame. Courtney, who had walked into this hospital like a queen, demanding service, was now walking out like a common thief. Her hands were cuffed behind her back, forcing her to hunch forward. Her expensive blazer was torn at the shoulder, and her hair was a wild mess around her face. She was not screaming anymore. The screaming had stopped when she realized no one was listening. Now she was just mumbling to herself, a stream of denial that sounded like madness. Tyrell walked behind her, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. He did not look up. He stared at his shoes, the expensive Italian loafers I had bought him for Christmas. He was weeping silently, his shoulders shaking with every step. He looked small. He looked like the little boy who used to scrape his knee and come running to me for a Band-Aid. But I had no Band-Aids for this wound. This was a wound he had inflicted on himself, and it was too deep for any father to fix. I walked out of the conference room and stood in the hallway blocking their path. The officers stopped when they saw me. They respected the victim. They respected the man who had survived the poison. Courtney looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her makeup was streaked down her cheeks, making her look like a melted wax doll. When she saw me, a flash of the old Courtney appeared just for a second. "You ruined everything," she hissed. Her voice was raspy from screaming. "You bitter old man. You would rather destroy your own family than share your wealth. You were going to rot in that big empty house all by yourself." I looked at her, and I felt nothing. No anger, no hate, just a profound sense of pity. She was so hollow. She was so convinced that money was the only thing that made a person whole. "Stop walking," I said to the officers. My voice was calm and steady. "I have one last thing to say to my son and his wife." The officers paused, holding Courtney and Tyrell in place. "You talked about the money, Courtney." I said I took a step closer so she could see the life in my eyes, so she could see that her poison had failed. "You talked about the $6 million. You were willing to kill me to get the house empty by the 1st of the month, because you thought you would inherit the sale proceeds." Courtney sneered at me. "Yes, and now you will lose it anyway. The bank will foreclose on Tyrell's debts. The developer will pull out. You will lose the house, Floyd. You will die broke." I reached into the pocket of my hospital gown and pulled out the folded piece of paper Barbara had given me. It was not the deed. It was a copy of the trust agreement. I unfolded it slowly, savoring the moment. "You are bad at math, Courtney," I said. "You calculated the timeline perfectly. You calculated the radiation dosage perfectly. But you forgot to check the public records." I held the paper. "This house was sold 5 years ago," I said. Courtney froze. "What are you talking about?" "I sold the legal title of the brownstone to the Jackson Family Charitable Trust 5 years ago," I explained. My voice echoed in the quiet hallway. "I set it up after my wife died. I wanted to make sure that if I ever got sick or lost my mind, the house would be protected. I am just the tenant, Courtney. I have a lifetime right of occupancy, but I do not own the asset. The trust owns it. And do you know who the beneficiary of the trust is? Courtney stared at the paper. Her mouth opened slightly. Her breathing hitched. It is the Brooklyn Youth Engineering Program, I said. It is a charity that teaches inner-city kids how to fix cars and build machines, the same way I learned. The moment I die, the house does not go to Tyrell. It goes to the kids. Courtney looked like she had been slapped. The blood drained from her face completely. Her knees buckled, and the officer had to grab her arm to keep her from hitting the floor number, she whispered. It was a sound of pure devastation. No, that is impossible. We checked. The developer said you were the owner. The developer saw my name on the deed as the trustee, I said, but he did not read the fine print, and neither did you. You killed yourself to steal a house that was already given away. I looked at Tyrell. He was staring at me with his mouth agape. The realization was washing over him. He had tried to kill his father for $0. He had sold his soul for a check that never would have cleared. We did it for nothing, Tyrell whispered. His voice broke. We did it for nothing. I nodded. For nothing. You betrayed me for air. You murdered your own conscience for a ghost of a fortune. Courtney let out a scream. It was not a scream of anger this time. It was a scream of despair. It was the sound of a woman realizing that she was not just a criminal, she was a fool. She collapsed completely, her legs giving out, dragging the officers down with her. She sobbed into the hospital. Linoleum, a broken heap of greed and regret. Take them away, I said, turning my back on them. I heard the officers hauling Courtney to her feet. I heard the heavy doors of the hospital swing open. I heard the sirens wailing outside. But I did not look back. I walked back into the conference room where Barbara was waiting. It is done, she said, closing her briefcase. Yes, I said, it is done. 6 months have passed since that day in the hospital. The seasons have changed. The cold, gray rain of that terrible month has given way to the warm, bright sun of early summer. Brooklyn looks different to me now. It looks cleaner. It looks brighter. I am sitting on the front stoop of the brownstone, holding a cup of coffee. The house is quiet, but it is not empty. Sitting next to me is Rousseau. We play chess on the stoop every Tuesday and Thursday. He is terrible at it, but he tells good stories. He brought me a cannoli from the bakery down the street. It is sweet and rich, and it tastes like life. And lying at my feet is a dog. His name is Sparky. He is a mutt, a mix of terrier and something else. I found him at the shelter a week after I got out of the hospital. He had a scar on his leg, and nobody wanted him. I looked at him, and I saw a survivor. I took him home immediately. He sleeps at the foot of my bed every night, guarding me from ghosts that no longer visit. My health has returned. The doctors were amazed at my recovery. The radiation burns on my wrist have healed into a white, circular scar. It looks like a bracelet made of pale skin. I do not cover it. I wear it as a badge of honor. My hair grew back, white as snow, but thick and strong. I gained back the weight I lost. I look like myself again, just a little older, a little wiser. The legal battle was short. The evidence was overwhelming. Courtney and Tyrell took plea deals to avoid a public trial. They are both serving 20 years in upstate New York. I do not visit them. I do not accept their letters. I do not hate them anymore. Hate takes too much energy, and I have better things to do with my time. I just feel a distant sadness for them, like you feel for a character in a movie who made all the wrong choices. The house is safe. The trust is secure. And the best part is that I have started teaching again. I go down to the community center 3 times a week, and I teach the kids how to repair engines. I teach them how to use a wrench, how to listen to the rhythm of a machine. But mostly, I teach them about value. I tell them that the most expensive thing you will ever own is your integrity. And once you sell it, you can never buy it back. Sometimes, when I am working on an engine, my wrist aches a little where the watch used to be. It is a phantom pain, a reminder of the invisible fire. But then I look at Rousseau arguing with a neighbor about baseball. I look at Sparky chasing a pigeon on the sidewalk, and I realize that I am the richest man in Brooklyn. I have my breath, I have my freedom, and I have the truth. The watch counted down to 0, just like Tyrell said. But it was not my end, it was my beginning. So to everyone listening out there, check your circle. Watch the people who claim to love you. And remember that real family is not about who shares your blood. It is about who would bleed for you. And if you ever find yourself wearing a weight that feels too heavy, take it off. Take it off right now before it drags you down. This is Floyd Jackson, signing off from Brooklyn. Stay safe, stay sharp, and never let anyone steal your time. I learned that the most dangerous poison is not cobalt-60. It is blind loyalty to people who do not deserve it. For years, I thought being a good father meant giving until I had nothing left. But I realized that true family is not defined by DNA. It is defined by who stands beside you when the world falls apart. We often ignore the warning signs because we are afraid to be alone. But I am telling you now, solitude is better than slavery. Trust your gut. If a relationship feels heavy, if it burns, you do not wait for it to kill you. Take it off and never look back, because your life is the one thing you can never buy back. If you believe that dignity is worth fighting for, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories about justice and survival.